I've covered a lot of darkness in my career. Murders, disappearances, stories that keep you up at night. But nothing prepared me for this. October 13th, 2017, a Friday, was the day Lamora Williams stopped being a struggling mother and became something else entirely. Before she made national headlines for killing her 2 toddlers, Lamora was invisible to most people. 24 years old, unemployed, raising 3 small children alone in a cramped apartment on Howell Place in southeast Atlanta. Her Facebook was a stream of exhaustion. Pictures of tired eyes, captions like, "I'm drowning, no help, these kids are killing me." Most people scrolled past, but the signs were there. Her own mother would later say Lamora had shown signs of mental illness since she was a teenager, hearing voices, losing touch with reality. She never received treatment. No diagnosis. No medication. Just life, grinding her down. I went to that apartment complex, now mostly abandoned, windows broken, silence heavy. Neighbors told me she kept to herself. Sometimes they heard yelling, kids crying for hours. Other times, nothing at all. Like the whole place went dead. Her 3rd son, just a baby, had been born with a disability. She had no car. No job. The kid's father, Jamil Penn, wasn't living there anymore. He sent diapers when he could. Called often. Tried to stay in their lives. But Lamora had begun to shut everyone out. 2 weeks before the murders, she was fired from her job at a pizza shop. They said she kept bringing the kids to work, couldn't stay focused. Her only real income was from government assistance, a few $100s a month. According to state records I reviewed, she had no history with Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services. No official reports. No investigations. No home visits. No one from the system ever stepped foot inside that apartment. Even when the warning signs screamed for attention, no one came. That Friday, October 13th, wasn't a stormy night. No thunder. No lightning. Just a mild, uneventful fall evening in Atlanta. But inside apartment 1604, something was unraveling fast. And no one knew it. This wasn't a crime that came out of nowhere. It was a slow-motion collapse, a mother slipping through the cracks until she hit the bottom and took her children with her. At the time, people would argue about what she was. A killer. A monster. A mentally ill woman crying for help. But before any of that, she was simply someone no one listened to until it was too late. And that's where the horror begins. From midnight on October 12th to 11 p.m. On October 13th, Lamora Williams was alone in that apartment with her 3 children, all under the age of 3. It's not clear exactly when it happened. There's no timestamp on the moment she made the decision. But somewhere in that 36-hour window, something inside her gave way. Investigators believe the crime occurred late in the evening on Friday. The apartment was small kitchen, living room, 1 bedroom, and the oven sat low to the ground, the kind with a pull-down door. It had been recently disconnected from the wall, later determined to have been yanked forward, toppled partially outward. There were signs of struggle, as if someone had tried to force it shut or pull it open with great effort. Both children, 1-year-old Jack Carter and 2-year-old Kuyant, had burns covering most of their bodies. The medical examiner's report was clear. They were alive when placed inside. The heat exposure was not instantaneous. It took time. They suffered. When I spoke to the lead investigator on the case, a man with 20 years on the force, he told me he'd never seen anything like it. We've worked homicides. We've worked child deaths. But this. He didn't finish the sentence. Lamora never called for help. Not during. Not immediately after. She stayed in the apartment for hours with their bodies. At one point, she apparently took out her phone and recorded a video. Not of the crime itself, that had already happened, but of the aftermath. Her children's lifeless bodies on the kitchen floor. Herself speaking into the camera in a detached, blank tone. Some said she looked in shock. Others saw it as something else entirely, cold, controlled, empty. Outside, the world kept turning. Cars passed by on nearby Metropolitan Parkway. Kids played down the street. No one suspected what was happening behind the blinds of Unit 1604. One neighbor later recalled smelling something strange that evening. Another said they heard loud thumps, like furniture falling, but brushed it off. It's the city, one man told me. You hear weird things all the time. And that's how it happens, doesn't it? In a city of noise, no one notices one apartment going silent. At some point, Lamora placed the children's bodies back onto the floor. She arranged them next to each other. Some reports say she covered them with a blanket. Others say she left them just as they were badly burned, limbs twisted, faces unrecognizable. But the most chilling detail came from what she did next. She recorded that video and sent it to their father. That moment, when his phone buzzed and he saw what she had done, would become the trigger for everything that followed. But before we get there, I want to be clear, this wasn't just a snap. It wasn't a mother losing control for 10 seconds. This was 36 hours of isolation, pressure, desperation, and, perhaps, calculation. It's a timeline no one can fully reconstruct, not even Lamora. She never gave a consistent account, but the result is the same. 2 small boys. 1 oven. A crime so unthinkable it still echoes like a scream behind closed doors. It was just after 11 p.m. when Jamil Pin's phone lit up. A notification. A video message. From Lamora. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. They shared kids' short check-ins were normal. But this wasn't a check-in. This wasn't normal. Not even close. The video was 58 seconds long. It opened with the sound of nothing. A strange silence. Then the camera tilted. The image came into focus, and what it showed will stay with him for the rest of his life. His sons. His baby boys. Lying on the kitchen floor. At first, he thought maybe they were asleep. Then he noticed the burns. The skin. The blackened oven door nearby. And Lamora's voice in the background, flat, quiet, saying something he couldn't even process. "They gone, Jamil," she murmured. "I couldn't do it anymore." He dropped the phone. Later, in court, he described it as a horror film, like Friday the 13th, but real. I've seen the transcript. He never made it through a full sentence before choking up. He called 911 immediately. "Something's wrong with my kids," he told the dispatcher. "Their mother just sent me a video. I don't know where she is. I don't know the address. But something's very wrong." That missing address delayed the response. Lamora hadn't sent a location. Penn tried to describe landmarks he remembered near her apartment. It took dispatchers almost 13 minutes to triangulate it. In emergency terms, a lifetime. Police arrived at the Howell Place complex at 11:27 p.m. The front door was unlocked. Officers entered and immediately saw them, 2 toddlers, side by side, not moving. Their skin was blistered, blackened in places. The smell of burned plastic and something else, something worse, hung in the air. One officer threw up in the bushes afterward. They found Lamora inside. Calm, not crying, not hysterical. She met them in the hallway and simply said, "They're in there." She was taken into custody without resistance. That's when the evidence began stacking up. The broken oven door, blood traces on the floor, the baby sleeping unharmed in the next room. The timeline grew sharper. The horror clearer. But it was the video that turned this case from tragedy to something else. Something people had trouble even naming. Forensic teams confirmed the footage was authentic. Metadata matched the time of death. The boys had likely been dead for hours before it was sent, which meant Lamora had sat with them, thought about it, picked up her phone, chose to film, chose to send. When I watched a redacted clip during my reporting, just a few blurred frames for context, I felt my stomach tighten. There's something different about seeing death through a mother's lens. It's not rage. It's not accident. It's something colder. And yet, when interrogated, Lamora didn't seem to grasp the severity. She gave inconsistent answers. At one point, she said she had left the boys with a babysitter and came back to find them dead. Then she changed the story. Again and again. But the video didn't lie. And neither did the burns. Inside that apartment, truth was charred into the walls. And now, there was no turning back. From the moment police entered that apartment, Lamora Williams began spinning stories. First, she claimed she had left the boys with a babysitter, a woman named Lisa. When she returned, she said, the boys were dead. She didn't know what happened. But there was a problem with that version. Actually, several. Detectives began digging immediately. Who was Lisa? What was her last name? Where did she live? Lamora couldn't say. She gave 3 different phone numbers, all disconnected. No one in the building had ever seen this supposed babysitter. And surveillance footage from the parking lot showed no one entering or leaving that apartment for more than 24 hours. Strike 1. Then came the autopsies. The Fulton County medical examiner confirmed both boys died from thermal injuries, deep burns consistent with high oven temperatures over a prolonged period. These weren't accidental. There were no signs of smoke inhalation from a fire. They weren't placed near the oven, they were placed inside it. Strike 2. Investigators examined the oven itself. The door was damaged, pulled violently from the base, hinges nearly torn off. Blood was found on the handle. Experts later testified the appliance couldn't have closed all the way with both children inside, meaning Lamora likely forced it shut repeatedly. Strike 3. And then there was the phone. A forensic team recovered multiple deleted videos from Lamora's device. Not just the one she sent to Jamil Penn, but others, including one short clip, just 11 seconds, showing one of the boys crying in the kitchen while she films from behind the camera. She never intervenes. That was recorded earlier the same day. At that point, the babysitter story collapsed entirely. Police confronted her with the footage. She said nothing, just stared. She was charged with 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated assault, and making false statements to police. In her second interview, Lamora gave a new story. She said she blacked out. Didn't remember anything? Maybe the devil got in me, she whispered. I didn't mean to hurt them. But the case wasn't about intent anymore. It was about facts, evidence. And those facts told one story, hers was fiction. Over the following days, prosecutors built a tight case. Witnesses were interviewed. Neighbors confirmed Lamora had a history of isolating herself. Her own mother told investigators she had warned the state years earlier. I knew something like this would happen, she said. They just didn't listen. What haunted me most, though, wasn't the apartment or the evidence. It was the silence. The sheer number of times this woman had cried out on social media, in texts, even in person, and how often she was ignored. One Facebook post, just days before the murders, read, I feel like I'm about to lose it. These kids need a better mom. I'm tired. I'm tired. No one responded. By mid-October, there was no more pretending. The system had missed her. And now 2 children were dead. The lie was gone. The evidence was overwhelming. Next came the courtroom, and a defense strategy no one was fully prepared for. The trial of Lamora Williams began in early November 2024 in Fulton County Superior Court. By then, it had been 7 years since the murders. 7 long years, but nothing had dulled the horror. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family members, curious onlookers. Everyone wanted to see the woman who had, allegedly, cooked her children alive. Lamora walked in wearing a simple beige prison uniform. No makeup. Hair tied back. She didn't look like a monster. She looked small, tired, lost. The prosecution opened strong. Video evidence, autopsy photos, the timeline, the lies about the babysitter. They told the jury this wasn't a crime of passion. It was deliberate, methodical. She knew exactly what she was doing, one prosecutor said. She planned it, and she sat with the bodies for hours before calling anyone. The defense had a different strategy. They didn't deny the crime happened. They didn't even deny that Lamora had done it. But they argued that she wasn't sane, that she had long suffered from untreated mental illness, including delusions, auditory hallucinations, and postpartum psychosis. She cried out for help, her attorney said. And no one came. Then came the expert witnesses. The defense brought in a psychiatrist who had evaluated Lamora multiple times. He testified that she was suffering from schizoaffective disorder, severe depression, and a dissociative break at the time of the killings. In his opinion, she lacked the capacity to understand the consequences of her actions. For a moment, the courtroom shifted. Some jurors looked shaken. Others scribbled furiously in their notepads. A few glanced toward Lamora, as if seeing her for the first time not as a killer, but as a broken person. And then, the twist. The prosecution had called their own mental health expert. But what no one expected was this. The defense's expert, the same psychiatrist who had testified in her favor, was forced under cross-examination to admit something stunning. He had based his diagnosis largely on Lamora's self-reported symptoms. And under pressure, he acknowledged that parts of her narrative were inconsistent, that during one session, she admitted fabricating some symptoms because, as she allegedly said, I needed a reason. The courtroom froze. One of the jurors, a middle-aged woman in a gray cardigan, gasped audibly. That moment changed everything. Suddenly, the question was no longer just about guilt, it was about manipulation. If Lamora had lied to the police, and to the court, and now maybe even to the psychiatrist trying to defend her, what else had she lied about? In closing arguments, the prosecution didn't lean on outrage. They leaned on cold, hard logic. Was she overwhelmed? Yes. Was she unsupported? Absolutely. But was she insane? No. She planned this. She made choices. She sent a video. The jury deliberated for less than a day. On November 15, 2024, they returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all 14 counts. including 2 counts of malice murder, aggravated assault, and giving false statements. The judge delivered the sentence the same day: life without the possibility of parole, plus 35 additional years. Some in the room exhaled. Others wept. Even members of the media were silent. Lamora didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't look up. I watched her as they led her out of the courtroom. And in that moment, she didn't look evil. She looked empty, as if she had already disappeared years ago. It was a week after the sentencing when I returned to Howell Place. The building looked the same. Rusted stairwells, overgrown bushes. The faded "no loitering" sign at the front was barely legible. Apartment 1604 had been sealed off after the crime, but over the years, new tenants came and went. The unit stood empty now again. I knocked on a few doors. Some neighbors remembered Lamora. Some didn't want to talk. One woman, a single mom with 3 kids of her own, told me she avoided that end of the building. "Feels cursed," she said, not looking me in the eye. Inside the apartment, the floor had been redone, but the kitchen layout was the same. The same low-mounted oven. The same corner where the children were found. I stood in the silence, trying to imagine the sound of that night, or the absence of it. And then I met the babysitter. Or rather, the woman Lamora almost hired. Her name was Naisha. She'd known Lamora from high school. A few days before the murders, Lamora had texted her, asking if she could watch the boys for the weekend. Naisha said no. She had her own kids to care for. She said Lamora didn't seem angry, just resigned. "I got a weird feeling when I hung up," she told me. Like something was coming. I asked her if she blamed herself. She shook her head slowly. "I didn't put those babies in that oven." But then she paused. "I just wonder. If I had said yes, maybe they'd still be here." That stuck with me. I've reported on murderers who killed for greed, revenge, jealousy. Lamora was different. She didn't hate her children. She hated her life and lost herself inside it. The question people ask me most is, was she evil? And I still don't know how to answer. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was broken. Maybe she wanted someone to stop her, but no one ever did. As I walked back down those steps for the last time, I passed a plastic toy lying in the grass. A red fire truck, faded by sun, missing a wheel. It hadn't been there earlier. I don't know who dropped it, but it felt like a reminder of what was lost, of what no sentence can fix, and of the kind of silence that kills long before anyone picks up a weapon.